everyone. This afternoon we are joined by the Honourable Ambassador of Ukraine to the UK. Before he was appointed to the role, he was by President Zelensky in July of 2020. He was a former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and former Deputy Foreign Minister of Ukraine. He served as the Ukrainian Ambassador to Canada between 2012 and 2014, and also served as the head of the mission of Ukraine to NATO. Please join me in welcoming the brave and the Honourable Ambassador, Mr. Vadym Prystaiko.
Thank you. I hope this thing works. Yes. Thank you very much and sorry for my delay. I tried diplomatically to be fashionably late. Avoiding most of you here obviously didn't work. This is my privilege to be here. It's always been my bucket list to come here and speak to students and professors of Cambridge. I'm humbled by the long list of distinguished personalities who had been privileged to talk here, to discuss here, to get into discussion, and hopefully tough ones. It's a good thing that I'm staying here, but because I would have to stand, just to read through this list. Good God, even Colonel Gaddafi was here. And who am I? Just me, a sergeant, and I'm with you. But, by the way, if somebody will tell you that I said the same in the other university, don't believe them. I did it out just of diplomatic tact. I always wanted to be here with you. I'm looking actually into the discussion rather than just to talk to you right here from the podium. I understand that I wasted some of the time, but just to give you a short introduction pave the big background for our future debate. I'm not aiming to draw a comprehensive picture. I believe that your professors will do it much better than myself, but I would like you to see these things, at least the way I see. And if my picture is patchy or manipulative, I will feel it undoubtedly in your questions. So, by the way, I'm very frustrated to come from one meeting to another. I was yesterday meeting with the serious people from the city, and to tell you the stories about our nation, instead of talking about cuisine, history, art, Ukrainian high-tech and other things, I have to tell you again and again about war with Russia, which had the tendency to grow in something worse. I hope it's not the Third World War. But let's have all things sorted out first. Let me start with the crash course of Ukraine's history, of Ukraine's relationships with Russia. You'll be surprised, but I'm not going to bring you all the way down to the creation of Slavic nation, of the Orthodoxy, of the fall of Kiev Rus and rise of Muscovy. I hope that Wikipedia and Google will help those ones who skip the history lessons at the university. Let's draw a line on the sand of time somewhere around 1991, of the collapse of Soviet Union, when three Slavic states met in a deep forest in Belarus and decided to dissolve Soviet Union. By the way, nobody asked all other 13 republics. That's just to give you a sense of what actually was the Soviet Union, federal state of equal nations. I believe that this collapse was a great thing for Ukraine and sort of a chance for us to survive. An evil empire fell. But somebody believed that it was the biggest geopolitical catastrophe. Your point of view depends where you stay right now, in Moscow or in any of the European Western capitals, now Kyiv included. So we shake hands and decided, a promise by the way, to stay good friends, and went our own ways. Sound familiar, right, for interhuman relations? Same here. Never worked. So we signed all the big treaties to respect our borders and sovereignty, exchanged the third biggest arsenal for the piece of paper. Somebody probably heard about Budapest Memorandum, forwarding all the missiles to Moscow. Some Ukrainians believe that we should have launched them in the same direction, but that's a different story too. And we allowed the Russian fleet stay in the Crimea until 2017. On my way here, I checked the calendar, it's 22 now, they're still there. They also, probably because of this lack of the punctuality, Russian ones, they also forgot to bring forces out of Moldova, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and all other places. So as annoying acts, they kept coming back to us, growing desperation and demands. Pay more for gas, do not date others, especially in the West, do not dig deep in your history and do not rewrite your books, especially history ones, or especially don't demand to have your own church ruled by Kiev, not from Moscow. List was growing as relationships were degrading. At the end of the days, they decided that we went too far, and it came with military power. Not 3 months ago, as many people believe, but all 8 years, I have to remind you. So they snatched the Crimea with 2 million people, orchestrated and supplied coup in east of Ukraine, taking over 7% of our territory, along with 27% of industrial outcome, plus 4 million people in these regions, creating the first wave of internally displaced Ukrainians, as high as 2 million people. We got the message, but also found the courage to resist. We fought and negotiated since 2014, paid with 13,000 lives, and stalled the progress of our own development, but preserved our political, pro-Western course, grew some considerable military core, strengthened democratic traditions, allowed to change the elites in Ukraine. As a result, became even more democratic and resilient. We're far from being perfect, but we kind of like it, being ourselves. That was the last drop in the Russian very shallow bucket of patience. On February 24, they decided to start doing this. They started bombing our cities, let tanks roll over the border, and marched to Kiev, promising to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine in 3 days. We live now through 86th day of 3 days invasion. Thanks to our bravery and resistance, but also to our partners' support. The short history lesson is over. Let's talk about Her Majesty's reality. Russians failed to take any of major cities in Ukraine, being thrown away from the capital, Kiev, more or less the whole north and center of Ukraine. They managed to take some southern Ukrainian provinces to provide land corridor to Crimea. Remember, this peninsula has no physical connection to Russian territory, only Russian hands, not on the maps. And they also secured the canal for water to Crimea, coming from our major river. They always talk about greatness. In reality, they're just stealing stuff. They're stealing water, they're stealing wheat, they're stealing stuff, toilets, I don't know, dogs' huts. You've seen it all on TV. They're pounding us with the missiles, destroying our cities, schools, hospitals, roads, 30,000 kilometers of roads by this day. The infrastructure losses climb up to $60 billion. Our economy lost a third of everything. And by the end of this year, GDP will probably shrink to 44%. Budget losses daily, $300 million. And we are not the wealthiest nation in the world. Export decreases 45%, import 46.5%. Third of all Ukrainian private companies ceased operations, 8 million people IDPs, with 5.6 million already turned into refugees. It's still very difficult for Ukrainians to put two these words, Ukraine and refugees, together. We have to start thinking this way, unfortunately. We are not advertising our losses for obvious reasons, but believe me, they're extremely painful. Global impact of Russian war is also very considerable. Your supermarkets start to ration cooking oil, as Ukraine is responsible for 47% of sunflower oils only. So fish and chips are endangered, that's true. But there are also bigger concerns than that. We're feeding almost 400 million people around the globe. 10% of global production of grains, 13% of corn. All these people will suffer. Sanctions and restrictive measures will drive the energy prices up. Even non-energy prices will grow up to 20%. Wheat prices will definitely climb up to 40%. Supply chains will break, investments uncertainty, migration challenges will only grow. And all of it comes on the heels of COVID troubles. Quite grim picture, right? So what's happening next? We will fight. This is the best chance in our own history to restore our Ukrainian statehood. And we're adamant in utilizing it fully. How long the fight is suffering will depend on many, many different factors. our own resolve and resilience, but also on how much and how fast we will be supported and supplied by the partners around the globe. I've seen the questions you asked, and I believe there are questions from the auditory. I hope to stay here, but also hear the question, what would be the end, as Ukrainians will see, end of the war? Anything else you want to ask, I will be also happy to reply. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your moving words. We'll start with a conversation between us, and then we'll go to the audience, who will have plenty of questions too, I'm sure. The event will be 1 hour long. But again, it's such a pleasure to have you, and thank you for coming, which brings me to my first question. Why have you come? Why do you think it's important to speak to students here in Cambridge today?
First of all, I came because you invited me, and I'm very grateful. And, you know, frankly speaking, there is the chance for me to talk to as many people right now, and I'm taking almost each and every chance. But in most of the cases, I'm talking to people who are sorting things out right now. Now I wanted to talk to people who will decide the fate of this planet, the fate of these nations. Many of those are sitting in this room for the future. I know that you heard this so many times from your own parents and from your own professors, but that's actually our investment. That's why, knowing that there are so big auditors, so many people from many different walks of life, and the subjects you are taking, the things you are interested, disciplines, are very, very, that's what I wanted, and I hope to have the questions from different, perhaps to understand and try to bring the picture of how we Ukrainians see it. So the next time you understand why we're asking for the assistance and why we all our suffering, and unfortunately the rest of the world will also have to suffer with us.
Quite relevant, I'd like to start by talking about the UK's relationship to Ukraine. Just last month, Zelensky described Britain as Ukraine's most sincere friend, thanking Boris Johnson for the direct, very clear and specific position of your wonderful and powerful country. How has Britain compared in their support to Ukraine with other countries?
That's a very good question, and that's something I would like to ask yourselves. Because Kievans and Ukrainians generally, each and every time I talk, each and every time I had the chance to talk to our media, they're asking, why UK? What is wrong? Have you ever fought? Have you ever had great relationships? You've been part of Commonwealth, you've been UK's colony or something else. The most you fought with the football fields. So the question is, what makes UK a new friend for Ukraine? And believe me, Ukrainians will remember who is their enemies, but they also remember who the friends are. So I guess that partially is your own perspective, what to do, the UK's perspective. You want to be global Britain? That's your chance to show that you actually have relevance and you're global. You know, I remember this recent integral review, which was done after 30 years of falls of Iron Curtain. For this great nation, nothing changed so much in 30 years, even after Soviet Union collapsed. Then you decided to have this review to understand where the future of your politics, and Ukraine is mentioned twice in this document. So there is some relevance even before. I also understand that some of you thinking that, yeah, we know this country. It helped Boris Johnson to escape the party gate and everything else. Can you imagine how much Ukrainians actually taking caring of what you think about Boris Johnson? None. Seriously. I've seen this caricature in the paper when they map all the whole Europe with the names on it, and where Ukraine was country which allowed Boris Johnson to escape his fate with the party. So we don't care whether it is true or not. What we care that we have somebody, a nation which supports us, some big one, P5, Security Council member, with the strong and decisive, if they want, moves in the international, global, political and economic market. And we're quite happy to have this friend.
So to just push on that slightly, some Tory MPs have argued that Boris Johnson can't go because of this great relationship he has and its use at the moment with the war. Do you think that it's valid that him being leader is important to the relations between Ukraine and Britain?
He's personally important. I don't want to, I'm not in the business of promoting political leaders here, and that's UK's leaders, not Ukrainian leader. But he's important. He's been a Secretary of State for the Foreign Affairs, and he was personally in Ukraine, visited Ukraine twice. I remember when he was coming, so he has this personal knowledge, he has this personal understanding, which is very important when you are doing the diplomacy. That's why we need him right here, right now, when he is saying, if your people decide that you will have to have somebody else, we will have to get and try to rebuild these relationships with a new lady or a gentleman.
And just lastly on the UK, do you think the refugee policy in the UK is enough? Is enough being done?
I don't want to get in trouble by criticizing your government, which has done so much for us, frankly. And I know from the other side, I have so many Ukrainians frustrated, unhappy, but I have to tell you that there is an objective problem. Ukrainians had to, when they had to flee from their own nation, could just step over the border between Ukraine and any European nation, because we had visa-free regime. With the UK, it unfortunately didn't happen before. So over all the years, when we enjoyed visa-free regime, when the Ukrainians could come and, I don't know, have pizza in Rome and beer in Berlin, we had to still apply and get in alliance for the UK's visa. When war happened, we've been faced almost the same problem. So what Ukrainians are going through now, they are waiting patiently until the UK's government will allow them to come. It's more or less the same visa regime. I asked already my colleagues here in the government, guys, can we have something? Can we have the easy sort of to make the visas easier for people who have to flee because their kids have been bombed and the city has been bombed right now. So this is a very long, very bureaucratic, painful process. We're trying to get through it. And there are many bureaucratic things right now. I know that you have to have secure sort of grasp of security on your own security and safety here. That's your right. But I'm asking the government to understand, to feel our pain and allow more Ukrainians, as the Europeans did, and then take care of the formalities and the papers.
Moving on to sort of NATO and the EU, an irony of the conflict is that Putin has succeeded in uniting organizations like NATO to the extent that they are more galvanized than at any other point since the end of the Cold War. Yet there is some patchiness in response of EU states, particularly with countries with significant exposure to Russia when it comes to energy. What do you think the future of these organizations will be, and what's the Ukrainian relationship with them likely to be?
You're right, you put so many realities in one question. Yes, the gas problem is a serious problem for all Europeans. You managed to escape this with the 2% of Russian molecules in the gas pipeline systems. Somebody like Germans have 62% almost. So the freedom you have to take your own decision is much more substantiated by your previous decisions to have independent energy policy. Some of the nations stuck where they are, and now they have to find the way how to escape this, how to fight this. The problem with the NATO, as with the European Union, is the democratic process of taking decisions. When somebody like Hungary decides to go against the whole idea to to put embargo on oil and gas, it's very difficult for the rest of the nations to get to the census, to the same decision. What you're also right, that Putin managed to help, not just the way Ukrainians also very thankful to Putin, he almost helped the most out of anybody else to recreate, to strengthen Ukrainian statehood and our feeling towards Ukraine. The same he did for NATO. 2 years ago, you remember President Macron was saying that the NATO is brain dead. Now look at NATO. Putin wanted to reduce, because he was saying that NATO is encroaching and surrounding him. Please, NATO has only 6% of borders of Russia. You can be surrounded with 6%. Now he has plus 1,000 kilometers of Finnish-Russian border. So he is actually failing in providing his own policy. He is failing to I don't know what he's going to explain Russians, because actually NATO is growing in numbers, NATO is growing in force, NATO is bringing the assets closer to borders, and Ukraine is still on the same course, going same western direction.
Just yesterday, we debated the motion, this House believes Russia is a distraction from larger geopolitical concerns. The motion was defeated by a landslide. Nonetheless, do you think part of the reason the West has been so complacent about the threat of Russia is that we've been too focused on China?
Nothing wrong to be focused on China. And I know there are people here who believe that China is the threat. By the way, in the same integral review, China is considered a competitor to the UK, and Russia is an enemy. So it's not just you here in this great university, but your government and your experts also think in the same way, that actually China is important, is dangerous, is competitive, it's strong, it's naturally strong, but Russia is declining in power, and that's why it's so dangerous, physically dangerous. By the way, Americans think otherwise. They believe that China is the enemy, Russia is just, very, very going wrong direction, declining state with the economy size of the Spain. So my problem is here, how I'm trying to get this understanding of immediate danger of Russia without losing the sides and losing the focus on China. When I started diplomacy, China was #1 export destination for Ukraine, not import. China was our #1 export destination. And look at them, how they grew over the years and who they became. That's what we wanted to achieve as well. Knowing that there are competitors like China, but at the same time to reduce the danger of these declining states like Russia.
And what has been the Ukraine's engagement with China recently?
We have ups and downs. We are providing so much of food to China, of ever-growing population of China. We hope to have some things, as everybody wants, telephones and tablets, and just stuff from them as well. And they've been sometimes quite dangerous in trying to steal our defense secrets. Recently, they wanted to buy biggest plant, which was producing the most of the engines for the whole Soviet Union, for all the aircrafts, helicopters, and everything. They managed to buy in the markets the small portions of the shares. At the end of the day, they almost became owner of the strategic plant, a strategic factory. That was a big problem because we didn't have developed sort of legislation on how to protect your own strategic industrial interests, something we were lacking in our system. So we were going through the court cases and will probably have to pay quite a steep fine. But that's the relations between nations. We have to understand where our interests and where our commercial interests are and where our political and geopolitical interests are.
And there's obviously a broader geopolitical context in which the invasion fits. And do you think China's brought enough pressure on Russia to de-escalate?
I know that China was always thriving on order. They're very good in playing the existing order. They're very good adapted to the orders. They were creating this order. They know how to deal with that. And they don't like the abrupt changes. That's what the Chinese diplomacy is very good at. China is rewriting order. It's not just going against Ukraine. It's actually going against the whole order of the world. Everything we've built, all the agreements we've had, Russians are now breaking because they couldn't find their place there. They wanted this order to disappear and to recreate something better with the better rules for them. China doesn't like it. And also China wants to have better prices for the gas and oil, which is just squeezing Russians right now, because Russians are so desperate to sell anything, gas and oil, that Chinese are quite happy to take advantage of this particular moment. So I don't believe, and look at them, they are not supplying Russians with the weapons. So I believe that China is playing very delicate role of being somewhere above the whole dispute, and they're achieving everything they wanted in the process.
Just to come back to Russia and sort of the West, the Russia report authored by parliamentarians just last year expressed anxiety about Russian activity in the East. There was strong intelligence supporting the claim that Russia was involved malignly in both the US presidential election of 2016 and the Brexit referendum. Russia invaded Crimea less than a decade ago. Why is it that the West didn't see this coming?
I believe that West was thinking that they're all-knowing, almighty, and they didn't believe us, that's for sure. We were telling them for many years that Russians are plotting against us and against you. They're taking part, trying to steal the secrets, they're trying to influence your elections, as they did in our case so many times. And they're trying to send the spies, they have their sleeping cells and everything else, and just don't believe in everything they say. You know, even now, sometimes I've been asked by your media, do you believe that when Putin is, I have to stop people here. No, I don't believe anything you will say, because I don't believe what Putin is saying. The day before invasion, Lavrov was saying, no, we're not going to invade Ukraine. What, are you crazy? We're invading right now in the 21st century. No. And unfortunately, West now has to pay the price for this reluctance to see the picture, which was grim, I understand. And everybody believed that finally the history is over, Fukuyama style, and everybody will be living in democratic, competitive but democratic societies. No, some other nations still can't live this way. They still have to go through, using other means than the rest of the world, at least Western world.
And sort of on Putin and not believing him, there are sort of two broad, divergent interpretations of what is going on. Some believe Putin is rational and extremely calculating, while others believe him to be a completely irrational actor with an increasingly incoherent approach to geopolitics. What do you think?
It's a very good article of Michael McFaul. He used to be an American ambassador to Russian Federation, and he knows what he's talking. I would highly recommend you to read this article. It's very interesting. He's just talking about the same. That we in the West, and Ukraine now is a part of this almost West ourselves, we believe that we have to consider all the processes as the competition between rational sort of players. And Putin actually is not, because this problems with history, greatness, the Soviet Union, this second pillar of the world is so dear to his heart and to many Russians that he still lives in this reality. And by the way, there is a change of generations. Look at, for example, of my leader, young, energetic person from totally different worlds. And you have Putin, Lukashenko. Lukashenko today recognized that he is not using the mobile telephone. And Putin is doing the same. He's not even using the computers. He is receiving all the information out of his aides, out of his entourage. Those people are filtrating everything, just been feeding him the picture he wanted to see. And this is no problem. They have to explain somehow the losses of Russian army in Ukraine. And I don't know if anybody is brave enough to come to him and say, you know what, we'll be just behind the schedule, a bit. 3 months.
On that, at the moment it seems like Russia is weakening and perhaps Ukraine will have some negotiating power in the future. What does a satisfactory resolution look like for you?
That's a great question. If I have another question like that, let me tell you immediately and play a hard line here. I do believe that we have to defeat them on the battlefield. I know that for many of you here it won't be like unthinkable how somebody can defeat the big, great Red Army. But as soon as you allow this idea into your mind, just for a second, you will start to see different options. And some options will allow you to start supplying Ukraine with weapons because you look at them. Hey, by the way, they are fighting. They are losing people that they managed to send to better worlds than Russia, and many worlds better than Russia. More than 20,000 people already. 1,000 tanks, 300 planes and helicopters. So these people actually are fighting. Let's let them give a chance to survive. And by surviving, I mean that we have to show them that they are not coming again and again as they've been doing through the history. We have to fight them and show them that, guys, this is your huge land, do whatever you like, just don't come to the neighbors, let them be. And that's, I don't believe that we'll be able to do it around the table of negotiations. We've been doing it for so long. You might tell that each and every war will finish up with negotiations, yes, but the conditions will be different. Each and every day, our soldiers are losing their lives, and we're pushing them out of our land, allowing us to have better negotiating position. At the end of the days, we will be able to, that's the end game for us, is just clear up our lands, allowing us to stay the way we want it, to develop the way we want it, to go, if you wish, left to the west, not where the Russians want.
And so if it works out so that you win on the field, after the war, what can be done to ensure this never happens again?
First of all, it's a very interesting question, how fast we will be able to, to live in Russia again. And this is a very painful question, but we will. I guess the generation, maybe generations will have to pass when we will be able to forget about atrocities they committed, all these raped women and killed kids, and all devastated economy. But we will live. We can't just depart from there geographically. We will stay there. How fast we will come to the resolution, it will depend on how fast Ukraine will be rebuilt ourselves, how soon our people will be given another chance in life. I hope that we will see somebody is coming to help us with reconstruction. By the way, if we manage to defeat Russians on the field, we will be able to come with the idea of reparations. Otherwise, we will have to compromise many things, reparations included, and sanctions, and legal cases, international courts, and so on and so forth.
And with compromising, is there any sort of red lines for Ukraine in these negotiations?
Yeah, there are the red lines. The red lines is our own territory. At least, if you have the spectrum, at least, we wanted them to get out of our lands on the day of 23rd of this February. But that's some minimum that will be even, for any president, will be very difficult to explain to Ukrainians. Oh, by the way, guys, you lost almost the half of your economy and a considerable chunk of your territory, and now they're back, we are now friends. No, it's not going to work. So on the other side of the spectrum, let them get out of all our lands, Crimea included. I guess that somewhere in between we will find our resolution as of now, and where it will be, it will depend on how fiercely our warriors will fight and how much assistance we will have from the rest of the world.
Thank you so much. We'll open up now to audience questions. Please raise your hand and a mic will come round.
Thank you for coming today, Your Excellency. So there was a recent phone call in which President Macron suggested that peace could be achieved with Russia if Ukraine gave up part of its land, notably areas in the Donbass and Crimea. And that's been something very clear where your government has kind of taken a hard line against that. So my question to you is, how is Ukraine planning on structuring its diplomatic response to increasing foreign pressure to give up land in exchange for a peace treaty? And how is your government going to kind of ensure that you maintain pressure on foreign governments that doesn't happen? Thank you.
This thing that Macron was actually asking Zelensky to give up some of the lands were not that much confirmed by Zelensky as well. I read about this, and you know that French government told, no, we never asked Ukraine to give up any lands in exchange for any sort of compromises with Russians. I guess something was said. I understand. I have to tell you that I was a part of the Ukrainian negotiation team for all these 8 years, and I was even drafting the Minsk II agreement myself with the help of my colleagues. So I understood what compromises we've been pushed at, the sort of direction we've been pushed. Some of them were including starting with Crimea. Like everybody said, guys, the Russians, Crimea, they wanted to have, they already have it. What do we do with it? Maybe we will leave it for some time, and so on and so forth. And that was not our mistake, because then Russians came to east of Ukraine. And they're like, yeah, Crimea is done, but let's let them have their fun in east of Ukraine. Most of these people speak in Russian, let them do it. Now, second time we understood our mistake. We cannot compromise in our heads, with the lands, with the people, and above all, we can't compromise with values. We've been listening attentively to the West for 30 years. Finally, we got a message. The values are very important for the coherent sort of approach of the whole society, of the whole government, and we are not going to compromise on that. A hard reality when it hits us. And we are not cocky. We understand that Russians are very dangerous. There are so many of them. They can throw millions and millions of their soldiers in the meat grinder. We will try to kill them as many as we can, but there are so many of them. We understand the danger from Russia, and we will have to negotiate. I just hope myself that we got the message, and we won't be negotiating these. We can, for example, we can negotiate. You wanted water right now for Crimea? Okay, we need gas. Why wouldn't you try to trade with us for the change once in a lifetime? Why would also have to, come with the hammer in your head instead of just trying to? And there are so many other things we can compromise with them. But the territories and the people, this is something Ukrainians won't buy.
Thank you for being here today. My question is, do you think that Ukraine has enough support on the ground in action rather than just in words from various nations around the world?
Months ago, when I started being asked by media here, when the foreign, especially Western intelligence, were saying that, Russians are coming, everybody was telling me, but you don't think about the boots on the ground, right? Because it's not impossible. It's not possible. No, it will never happen, ever. But then people were saying, yeah, but by the way, you understand they will never provide you with heavy weapons. You just have to understand it. You have to, live with that. And I was always telling them, guys, do you think from the political point of view, your society will allow you, when they see that Ukrainians just killed, executed, how long your society, democratic society, liberal society, will allow you sit here and tell us that, guys, yeah, we are with you, do your thing. We will light next building with the blue and yellow. It was a joke that Europeans are in real trouble. They ran out of buildings to light them blue and yellow. That's not the support we wanted. And I started telling them, guys, why would we here, behind the closed doors, think about your involvement in a war? Because it will be war. If we do it now, in 2-3 months when they come, and they will come, we will be prepared. Unfortunately or fortunately, we now have this moment when 40 nations are sitting around a big table and planning what sort of military equipment Ukrainians need. And believe me, sooner or later, we will have to come to the idea what would happen if this war is turning into something ugly and will endanger the whole society, the whole human society on this world. What will be the next decision? I don't know, maybe it will be again the idea of sending troops on the ground. Hopefully, it will never come to that. But I guess that somebody in very dark rooms, behind very thick doors, have to already plan this as well.
Thank you very much for coming
Great
today.
short.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Vyshavanka Day yesterday. Obviously, Ukraine and Britain are friends at the moment. So much so that people in Ukraine are calling Boris Johnsonyuk, and there are things like that spreading. Do you think that Britain and other countries, as the war drags on, which it has done, obviously now, do you think that people will stop losing interest? And do you find that in your own work that you find people being very supportive at the beginning and kind of being like, go on, we've got your back, and then sort of, other things take over, food prices and gas prices and oil prices, and then you find yourself struggling to kind of, get that interest and get that support? Thank you.
The short reply to your question is yes. We are totally realistic about this. We understand that sooner or later the importance of Ukraine, the popularity of Ukraine will diminish. What I have to do as the ambassador and many of us around the globe is just to explain why it is still important to keep it on the radar. Why it is still important to help right now. At the same time, from our side, we will do everything possible to use this window of opportunity. But I hope that this time the rest of the world will understand. Frankly speaking, when we talk about the rest of the world, we have to be also held to keep in mind that we are mostly talking about West, because there are different points of view, different view from the rest of the world. India, China, Africa, Latin America, they see it differently. In most of the cases, they don't understand why it is happening. They listen and read through the Russians' narratives, and yeah, why not? Some of them are poisoned by anti-Americanism and believe that everything is against the United States is good already. So we have to use this opportunity, and we're using it. That is why we're actually trying to knock at each and every door we can, sometimes scratching on this door, bringing to these people understanding that, guys, it's not about Ukraine only. Yes, please help us to survive, but it's not about us only. We are not teeny tiny nation which you allowed to succumb to Russians' pressure, like Georgians, Moldovians, and the rest of them. This is now serious. If they can take such a big nation, the biggest by territory in Europe, 40 plus million people, next time when the appetite will grow, they will come for you, for NATO, for, I don't know, Sweden, Finland, for somebody else, for Poland. That is why our friends in the Baltic states and Poland, they are nervous, because they understand much better than everybody in the West that the appetite is growing, the Russian ambitions are growing. We have to deal with them right now, right away. And hey, by the way, there are Ukrainians who are fighting in our struggle, so we don't have to. Let's help these guys work for their, their own independence and their own survival. That's why we're also talking, that's why my president is doing what he's doing, talking to everybody else. And by the way, if you don't mind, we will invite you as the university also next week to talk to my president. If it is okay with you, we will send you an invitation. How about that?
That would be great, absolutely. That would be amazing. Questions? Good?
When to get a ticket?
Cool. Where do I sign up? So I'm an American. I am deeply concerned about...
Nobody's perfect, that's fine.
So I'm deeply concerned about the rise of, well, I wouldn't even call it a rise, but I'm deeply concerned about the prospect of American voters electing members of Congress and later on potentially a Republican president from a party that has been soft on Putin, and at worst, they've played politics with Ukraine's security. Is that a concern shared by Ukrainians and your administration? And I couch this question in the fact that Mitch McConnell, the minority leader in the Senate, the Republican minority leader, just visited Ukraine and seemed to be pretty buddy-buddy with your president.
There is a simplified version of Ukraine foreign policy that we need, Democrats and Republicans will suffer, or the otherwise. I have to tell you that Ukrainians, we're quite young nation, but we're not naive. I'll give you an example. The last US president, which was on Ukrainian soil, was actually Bush the Jr., Republican. Look at it. The Obama, who was so close generally to democratic processes, in his 2 terms never set foot on Ukrainian soil. Trump also didn't do it for his own reasons, although he was traveling all around Ukraine, everywhere, not in Ukraine. So we want and we believe that the United States understands the problem. Sometimes we have to educate people because they are so preoccupied with the rest of the whole world that Ukraine is just occupying very little time they can spare for Ukraine. But that's what we believe, that it is getting into the each and every mind of each and every person, regardless of which side of the aisle they are sitting. And that's what we are hoping. If your nation will decide to have somebody, particular president, we might cry a bit, but then we'll tell you the great idea, let's do it again. Let's talk to these people again.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for coming. I was in Germany in April, and while the German government has done a lot in terms of humanitarian aid to your country, taking in lots of refugees, how does it feel that they're so intertwined with Russian natural gas, and that every time they sort of buy natural gas from Russia, that's sort of funding a war machine against your country?
Very good question. Frankly, it's not just gas. We counted recently that each and every 3rd bullet is bought by the tax of the Western companies operating in Russia now. It's not even just simply buying the gas. It's actually been operating on the ground. They allow to taxations to support 1/3 of military machine of Russian Federation. But then, keeping the emotions aside, I have to remind you that Ukraine was a biggest buyer of natural Russian gas. People don't understand how complex our relationships with Russia. The Russians managed to lose the biggest buyer of their own gas. The European Union, the whole bulk of European was buying more, but there is no other nation in the world which would be so dependent on Russian gas as Ukraine was. Look at us right now. They're killing our people, just physically killing them. So what we are trying to tell the Germans that, guys, you are dealing with not just a force on the market, which offering you gas for the appropriate market price. You're dealing with somebody who's weaponizing everything they have. They don't have much, they have gas, they will weaponize the gas. You wanted to buy fur coats, they will weaponize fur coats next day. So this is very difficult conversation, and they made some their own moves, like they decided to cut the nuclear. You know why we managed to survive right now? Because we are second only to France in Europe in generation of electricity generation from nuclear. We keep them, we managed to survive, because they immediately cut everything. It's coal, gas, oil for us, and we survived as well. So this is a message we're trying to send to Germans. Try to live up to the same values you were teaching us all these 30 years of our independence. Try to understand how difficult, how dangerous it is to be dependent on one provider of the gas. Try to see the picture in all its complexity. And we have to tell you that they are doing this. It's taken frustratingly long time. Ukrainians are not happy with that, but Germans, with their mighty economy, biggest in Europe, they are coming. And when they are there, we helping Ukraine, it will be a totally different picture.
Hello, sir. Thank you for being here. So I'm wondering, besides UK, which country which country do you also consider the biggest alliance you're having now, currently facing this conflict? And also, as a Taiwanese, I'm specifically curious about your viewpoint about whether or not Taiwan is considered as an alliance in the current situation. Because I know that there might be some symmetrical parallel or comparison that can be made. But while I think substantially Taiwan isn't really helping much. Thank you.
Sorry, symmetrical response in what way?
In the way where the Russia, Ukraine, and China, Taiwan, because that is something, as a Taiwanese, what I quite often hear people compare about. Thank you.
Okay, I'll tell you that obviously the closest allies to us right now is Poland, because that's more or less the same nation where we had so many histories and problems in our own lives, and at the same time we have so many friends and connections. It's just more or less the same people, but had two different ways. One became Catholics and took Latin language, the letters and everything. Some of them stayed, stayed with Orthodox Christianity. And it happened centuries ago. That's why these two tribes, Slavic tribes, became different and built their own different nations. But these people, through all their history, they understand the danger of Russia. They understand as ourselves what would happen to them if Russia is unchecked and will roll over the border, this time their border. There are other nations like United States and Canada. They are naturally very close to us, especially Canada. And there are other nations. Don't want to omit anybody in the list. For example, in Czech Republic, the biggest ethnic community is actually Ukrainians. So they understand, they feel it, that's very close nations. Georgians, for example, with their new government I want to discuss, but the Georgians as the people, and so on and so forth. So we are quite lucky to have these nations being our closest allies. And there are other allies which are not that close historically, but we are growing in, as many of them are discovered in Ukraine, is actually, that's something existing somewhere. The more relations we're building, business, cultural, the more we grow in relations with these nations. The Taiwanese problem with China, obviously there is the analogy here. And I believe that the message has been now sent by Russians, by the way, to Chinese. And Chinese are becoming more and more sort of considerable in this, like saying, doesn't work. Chinese are so dependent on free trade in the world, on merchandise, even merchandise trade. How can they survive if they will be blocked from this merchandise trade and access to sea and access to all the market in the globe? And they're so interconnected. By the way, I argue that this is one of the last wars, global wars we have, because we became so interconnected. That's probably not just the first war on YouTube. This is the first major war when big companies, grassroots movements, NGOs, people like you, artists and actually fighting the big nuclear state. And nothing this big nuclear state can do because, Russians are trying to get vodka in the supermarket and hey, the Apple Pay is not working. and so on and so forth. So this is a very unique situation in our civilization. And I guess these wars, especially global wars, are so 20th century, so outdated. They will even us, I hope my generation will live through it, that we will settle all this course in the big nations like China will think not just twice, many times before they do anything stupid.
Thank you for being here. What would you like to see citizens of countries do specifically? We can talk about governments and things, but what do you want individual people to do, like particularly within Britain?
Thank you. First of all, citizens are already doing. I know that even this university collected some money to help Ukrainians. We're very humbled and thankful for this. If you compare all the nations in the globe, my embassy managed to receive 60% of everything around the globe my embassy collected from the donations. This is a tribute to this particular nation which understands what sort of help Ukrainians need and why they need so far. The second biggest thing I would like to see from the nation and from the people, obviously the electoral pressure on their own governments. Just to remind them, some of the politicians are very good people, they understand the whole complexity and they wanted to help, but they need a reminder from their own electorate that, guys, by the way, this is the right thing to do. And do you do this thing? Don't worry about it. We are supportive. We understand. We might even crank down a bit the gas just to help us to go through this difficult time. And as long as nations will allow, people will allow their governments to help, that's how long we will be able to receive this assistance. We do understand that totally. Thank you.
I think very simple question, probably often mentioned. How do you envision the role of British universities in their support for Ukraine and Ukrainians? And from what I understand, there is governmental support of initiatives in Ukraine that aim to secure places, fellowships and scholarships for Ukrainian students. At the same time, it is my understanding that Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine is absolutely terrified of potential brain drain. So where do you see the balance between those two? Thank you.
This guy comes tomorrow. We'll check with him. Is he terrified? I mean, the Minister of Education. You have, in a couple of days, you have big gathering of all the ministers of education. They will be able to discuss it. But me, myself, I'm quite terrified. And we can call it a good competition. But we understand that, Ukraine is a nation, as I mentioned, 40 plus million people, and we have 20 million people in diaspora, even before war. So this exodus, the next wave, will be huge. And we will be devastated as a nation. So many people will stay where they are. So many kids will go to schools and universities. If we go through the war for the years, they will never get back. We realize that. We're prepared for that. It's very, very, very dangerous for us, very difficult, but we understand that will happen. But at the same time, we believe that we are becoming a sort of, members of the whole community. They're opening up ourselves to the rest of the world. If our brightest and will be able to go and get better education, I don't know, maybe some of them will get back and bring this perspective, bring this knowledge back home. If not, okay, let's enlarge and increase and empower the rest of the world, which we are an integral part of right now. We don't want to leave behind the Iron Curtain and get everybody back, as some of the nations are doing. We understand the reality on the ground. We can't provide the economic sort of conditions for many of these people to thrive and do whatever they wanted to be educated with. But there are some things which we are very good at, and we hope that people come and use their knowledge, and actually will be very competitive because they receive the foreign education. Some, in most of the cases, Western, but sometimes very important Eastern education as well. So we are quite open to looking at this perspective with quite open heart.
Thank you very much for visiting us today, Mr. Ambassador. One of the things that's really concerned me has been the sort of potency of Russian nuclear blackmail to effectively limit the policy options of countries like the UK. I'm thinking in particular the sort of discussions about the no-fly zone some months ago, where policymakers in this country at least didn't even see it as an option because of the risk of nuclear escalation. And I recognise it's a thorny problem, no one wants to risk nuclear war, but is there any real pragmatic solution going forward to addressing this strategy that Russia has, apart from increasing the number of Article 5 NATO states in the east?
Thank you. I have to get you back in my introductory remarks again. This bloody Budapest Memorandum. Now, seriously, this is a big pain in Ukrainians right now. We had more nuclear warheads than UK, France, China together, twice this number. We would be third biggest nation with the biggest nuclears, be probably as bad as somebody else with the nuclears, threatening everybody with nuclear. But it's done already. We are not there. We believe that we've been fooled. Many Ukrainians believe that the outcome of this war would be different. This won't be even a war because we will be able, to counterbalance the Russians. But it's done already. It's over. So, but we believe that everything Russians are doing, threatening first of all us and then everybody else with war, they just blackmailing all of us. They're raising the hand. You might argue that if we are wrong, we will die. That's very true. But that's the choice, the geopolitical choice, and our national choice we have to make. It's unthinkable, especially for Ukrainians who went through Chernobyl. If you want to ask anybody in the nation, probably us and Japanese will give you a real answer, how dangerous it is, unthinkable it is. But that's the part of the equation which we have to resolve right now. Whether we succumb to their threats or whether we try to fight through it and go through it and actually become what we wanted to become. Again, we do realize the threat, and there is no remedy. Article 5, or somebody believes that the execution line between Putin and real button is so long that somebody in this line will be reasonable enough to understand that that's his own responsibility to preserve, to save the life on Earth. And it also might happen. Or at the end of the day, they found out that only half of their rockets can actually fly, which we see right now. So there are many options, but the considerations are very difficult indeed.
Thank you very much for coming. I would like to ask about Belarus because we are talking about Russia, so it's reasonable to ask this question. A couple of weeks ago, so-called President Lukashenko said and underlined that Belarus is not going to invade Ukraine. Sure. Do you still believe in threat from Belarus in the context of the Russo-Ukrainian war?
Talking about Belarus itself, just for a sec, I remember when I was interviewed by two Belarusian journalists, and when they switched off the camera, at least they promised to switch off the camera, which is not happening in reality with journalists in most of the cases. But anyways, they asked me the question, what would you think would happen to us, Belarusians? Although the interview was totally on different topic. And I look at them and told, guys, I understand that you believe that you're wise enough, so you have peaceful nation, which will go through all of this. You have reasonable leader, and so on. Unfortunately, you will have to go through the same dirty, bloody process as the Ukrainians. Because we also thought that we are cool and, wise and everything. We were looking in 1992, I guess, when Russians were shooting at their parliament, and thinking, what are they doing? How can they not see that this is just almost a civil war on the streets? But then it happened to us. So you have, unfortunately, to pay for your independence, for your chance to with the human lives. It's very, that's nobody's offering, nobody wants, but that's the reality. So they will have. They just postpone this, inevitable problem they will face sooner or later. The second part, whether they will get into war with us. We understand that you may think anything you want about Lukashenko, but he is political survival. He will survive because he was very flexible at the end of the days. Check what he's saying about Ukraine in one day. You will see everything. He is not supporting. Then he is actually saying, yeah, what a great warriors Ukrainians are. And next day, well, we will crush them with Russian help. Like us and Russians, us together with Russians. So I believe that these people will understand, and his great leader will also understand that there will be tragedy for their own nation to go against Ukrainians who are even more brothers and sisters than Russians. Russians are totally controlled. The message there, Belarusians are not that much. I hope that they will stay where they are, and we will talk to them later, but peacefully. Thank you.
And just before we finish, I was going to ask you if you have a message for the many Ukrainian students in the audience, any advice for this extremely painful and difficult time, especially being here and so far away from the situation.
Thank you. This is a very good chance to reach out to them, and I have troubles now to reaching out to almost 60,000 Ukrainians who are there on this soil only. But in Poland we have 2 million people already. So that's how difficult our task to reach out and talk to our Ukrainians. But I'm happy if I can retranslate this message to Ukrainians who are here. Please, please, please. Get as much knowledge as you can right here. Enjoy this moment on peaceful living somewhere outside of the cities which have been bombed. Respect this chance which has been given by your parents, by yourselves, to get educated and to find better life in the future. And please bring this knowledge if you can and enrich ourselves, enrich our chances of survival. And not just Ukrainian, just the whole world. We believe that you people in such universities like that. And I'm also very proud of my own university. It's not Oxford, not Cambridge, not Birmingham, it was in Kyiv, but that's fine. We still believe that all of us, we are bringing something to this world. And if these people will, glass of beer is fine. I mean, good time is fine too. But please use this chance and enlarge, increase your knowledge, your understanding, your appreciation of the world. Nothing else I would expect from them as ambassador.
Thank you so much, and please all join me in thanking Mr. Ambassador for his time.
Thank you very much.